Hello and welcome to Food Rebels. This is the show that's dedicated to the more rebellious side of the food world. We're all fed up with big corporations making bad decisions for us. It's time that the challenger brands and the little guys shine. Each episode we meet food and drink founders, chefs, or personalities who are changing the food industry today for the better. I'm AJ Sharp. I'm a food and drink judge, public speaker, agency owner. I believe strongly in manifestation and my favourite colour is orange. But professionally, I've spent decades helping ethical and sustainable brands to grow. But Food Rebels is about so much more than that. This is about raising understanding and respect for great tasting, nourishing food and drink. On the show, we meet some really inspiring people. We taste great food and drink live on air, and we peek inside the minds of some of the most influential food experts today. So join us. And if you want to show support for the show and the inspiring guests we have on, the best way is to subscribe, share, and drop a comment below. Today on Food Rebels, I'm joined by Simon Wright, a sustainable food consultant working with the Danish Agriculture and Food Council. He helps to connect the dots between Denmark's world-leading organic and plant-rich food culture and the UK's growing appetite for change. Along with Stephen Minnow, he was instrumental in shaping a study tour to Copenhagen. I was lucky enough to be invited on it, and it gave us a rare behind-the-scenes access to the Danish approach to food, farming and gastronomy. I can't wait to dive into what we learned and what lessons the UK can take home. Simon, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Can you tell me the purpose for the tour to Copenhagen? What is it about the Danish food system?
The Danes have this brilliant scheme called Gastro diplomacy, where they attempt to influence the world through food, which, as you can imagine, is very popular. And two of the strands that I've been working on are promoting organic agriculture, which is something I've been doing for 40 years, but also plant-rich, which is what they call plant-based. And that in itself is fascinating because from the get-go, they're talking about the positive, plant-rich. So they've got a really interesting mindset. So the purpose of the study tour in Copenhagen was to expose some key people from the UK to some of the brilliant initiatives that the Danes have been running, particularly in Copenhagen, but throughout Denmark.
It was absolutely fascinating. I don't know how I managed to get on the list, but it was absolutely mind-blowing how incredible and the depth of detail that the country has gone to create really, really beautiful food.
It goes very deep. I mean, in our first session, we were talking about organic certification, which is a fairly dry subject.
Yeah.
And in Denmark, instead of there being lots of different private certification schemes, there's one scheme that's run by the state. Everybody trusts it as a result. And the lady who's leading the session said, what you have to understand is that in Denmark, we trust our government. And you could hear the entire room of Brits go, oh, bloody hell.
Yes, same me. Yeah, it was really funny, wasn't it, when she said that? She was like, we really trust our government. And we were all kind of like, yes, we're going wrong with this here, aren't we?
So that says to me there is a fundamental difference in the mindset between Danish citizens and the UK citizens. And there is a belief that a lot of these government initiatives are actually for the benefit of citizens. And that has allowed them, it's just provided a brilliant platform to build from. So we saw again and again how people in Denmark have said, okay, well, I'm not quite sure I understand it, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll give it a go. And as a result, they have made a lot of progress in terms of things like coming up with a diet that is not just good for health, but good for the planet.
And that was really incredible, wasn't it? I mean, they really have bought into organic, haven't they? In a way that I think in the UK, perhaps we've sort of dabbled with it. The farmers aren't terribly keen. It's not always easy to yield higher crops, whatever. But over there, organic is absolutely the base mark of what everybody is expected to be providing, isn't it? From the farmers to the hotels, the kind of restaurants, hospital food, everywhere, across the board. Everyone is supposed to be making sure that they are making what was it? Something like the bare minimum was something like 50 to 60% organic.
So Denmark has one of the highest consumptions of organic food in the world. It's about 15% of total food is organic. And if you think in the UK, it's less than 2%. So that is a big difference. Partly it's because the state has really got behind it. So one of the really interesting sessions we had was about the provision of school meals in Copenhagen. And they have managed to take their school meals completely organic without charging more for them. And they did it very cleverly, because they said to parents, oh, we're going organic with the school meals, but it won't cost you any more. And all the parents said, fantastic. And then after it had been running for a little while, they said, oh, by the way, we took red meat out of the diet in order to balance the books, but it's still delicious. And the parents said, oh, that's fine, it works. So they were very clever as to how they sold that in to parents. But it means that every child in Copenhagen at lunchtime gets a fully organic meal. And it hasn't cost the parents any more than before when it was non-organic. So the government has played a major part in promoting organics, which is a key difference between Denmark and the UK.
One of the things, and we'll go on to some of the sexier side of umami and things in a bit, but one of the questions when we were at Food Nation, which I think Lisa described as Tinder for food organisations. It's a sort of government body, isn't it? Pulling together the ministerial departments, the agricultural departments, private companies. You know, all these people are sat around the same table looking at things from the same point of view, which is extraordinary. But they were looking at the way in which everybody can be part of this. And I remember the real takeaway for me was it Anders says something like, the invoices never lie. Like, this is how we are managing to control it. The invoices never lie. So these invoices have the tonnage, they have the price, they have absolutely everything on it. And you cannot lie. It becomes a legal document, doesn't it?
Yeah. The other thing they've done, and I take my hat off to this, is they have made procurement sexy. So they have realised that if you specify you want organic tomatoes, then you're going to get organic tomatoes, but you have to say that's what you want. And they've got very, very clever in their procurement, to the point now where in the city of Copenhagen, they will go to a farmer and say, that field you've got, I'd like you to grow carrots for us, please. So it's a direct relationship between the city of Copenhagen and their catering people and the farmer. There's no middlemen involved. And we went to a hospital. And I mean, the concept of a hospital that has fully organic food is mind-blowing. Not only is it fully organic, but there's a menu, so you choose what you want to eat. They deliver it to your bedside at the time you request it, and someone stays with you to make sure you eat it. That sort of attention to detail is just gobsmacking. But anyway, we're in the hospital, and they are now at the point where they've got their own butchers. So they buy in a whole cow, and they will butcher that themselves and then use the whole carcass throughout the catering department in the hospital. So there's no waste, and of course it's a much more economically efficient way of working. And you could see we were sitting in the room listening to this, and you can see everyone going, bloody hell, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that?
And it was fascinating, wasn't it? There was so much about that conversation where they'd up-leveled, nurses haven't got time to sit there and discuss whether or not there's a third of the food left on the plate. They're busy. And so they were employing people and calling them hosts, not, porters or staff or whatever. They were giving them their own kind of status and importance, because that was their job, was to make sure that they were keeping a really good track of what had and hadn't been eaten. The person was already choosing from a menu that already had protein-rich food that was designed for their particular ailment, whatever had landed them in hospital in the first place. It was extraordinary. I mean, so obvious, yet we're not doing it because we are trying to do things on such a massive scale, and I just don't think that attention to detail has been facilitated.
No, and the other part of the work they've done in the hospital, which I thought was really good, was they have been able to prove that improving people's nutrition whilst they're in hospital means they get better quicker, and so they're out of the hospital quicker, so they actually save money because they're looking at it holistically.
It's just so obvious, isn't it?
It's so obvious. It was so obvious. I told a friend about this when I got back, and he said, well, of course. And I said, yes, but then think about your own experience. And he'd got a aging relative who was in hospital, and meals were coming and going untouched, and so her nutrition was suffering, so she was getting iller, and it's a negative spiral. Whereas in Denmark, they seem to have turned the spiral in the other direction.
Completely, and seen the importance of it. I mean, I was in for a routine operation earlier this year, and sat down, and after my operation got told I was having jacket potato with cheese because that's what the person in the bed last night had ordered. I was like, sure, I mean, I'll eat a jacket potato, but imagine if that was a really inappropriate meal for me.
Yeah.
Luckily it wasn't. But honestly, just stuff like that is so joined up. And I think it was Ian Nottage, wasn't it, who asked the question, but who's taking responsibility for this? And the answer was so extraordinary, wasn't it? This sort of real collaboration. And he kind of looked at Ian and went, well, everyone takes responsibility.
Yes. I don't know, you remember years ago in the food industry, if you walked into a factory and said who's responsible for quality, someone with a white coat would get pointed at and said, oh, it's them. Now, of course, the industry says, you walk into a factory and you say who's responsible for quality, everyone's responsible for quality. And that's the seismic shift that they've made in Danish hospitals.
And an incredibly important one. As the guy who was taking us through the procurement said, we don't want people staying in hospital too long. We want them to go home quicker. So this seemed like a very obvious part of getting people better, faster. Absolutely incredible. But it wasn't just that, was it? It was when we went to Meyer's Madhouse. Can we just talk about Claus Meyer's for a minute? How cool is he?
He is so cool. He's a really important figure in Danish gastronomy, and he's left quite a legacy. Claus Meyer was incredibly important in the whole Danish Scandinavian gastronomy development that brought us the world famous Noma restaurant, and people who worked at Noma are scattered throughout Danish food now, and those lessons are being built on and amplified. So a crucial guy, and he's got quite a legacy that he's left behind.
He has, hasn't he? So not only was Noma best restaurant in the world 2 or 3 times, a number of times.
Yeah.
But I mean, Claus Meyer, when I started looking him up, we didn't actually get to meet him, did we? We went to his madhouse, his food house. But when I started looking him up, to me, to make it kind of easy to think about him, he was like the Jamie Oliver in terms of activism and taking on that slightly more political role. The Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall of let's really look at organic, decent food that's come out of the ground and care about it and make it taste really amazing. And maybe a touch of Heston Blumenthal for the sheer innovation of let's really look at how to make this much more exciting and much more interesting. He's a really interesting character, and I can't believe we don't know about him more in UK food culture.
Indeed, because there's no doubt that his influence has reached the UK through people like Noma. So he has had an influence in what we do. And what we heard about was what they're working on at the moment, which is green umami, which is a fascinating concept. Yes.
My favourite bit of the tour has to be when we went to Meyer's Madhouse, which doesn't mean madhouse, it actually means food house, doesn't it, in Danish?
Yeah.
And this guy, we meet a guy, don't we, as we're walking in, who goes, I'm just the food janitor, in that lovely, Danish, humble, hilarious humour. Turns out he's the head chef. It's Bo Fredriksson, isn't it? I think I've got his name right. And he starts telling us about green umami. Can you tell us about that? Because it was fascinating.
It was fascinating, and I agree. I think it was a really important part of the trip. So the theory is these American tech companies have spent millions and millions of dollars doing very complicated things to replicate the texture of meat. The Madhouse approach is that you don't need so much to replicate the texture of meat as the flavour. If you want people who are used to eating meat to switch to a more plant-rich diet, it's the flavour that will get them coming back again and again. And that's where green umami comes in. Umami being the intense savouriness that meat is really good at delivering. You need to replicate that, and they're working on really interesting ways of getting incredibly intense umami extracts and flavours naturally, organically, but entirely from vegetable-based products. And I think this is very exciting because for me, that's what's been missing. I'm not a fan of products that pretend to be meat, although I am a vegetarian. But the idea that you can come up with a way of transforming vegetarian cooking and delivering these really intense flavour sensations that people associate with meat, that seems to me the way we can get more and more people, maybe not to become vegetarian, but maybe to have more plant-rich products in their diet, which would be good for humans and be good for the planet.
Yeah, I loved it. I love the moment when Bo, everybody on the study tour is related to food service. There is a number of chefs in the room and he goes, come on, let's be honest. It's not hard to make meat taste good. Season it, cook it, done. Yeah. And all these chefs are sort of like, whoa, well, I think you'll find there's a little bit more to it than that. But his point was really valid, wasn't it? To actually get that depth, that complexity, that umami, the saltiness, the length on the flavour of the finish. On something like the humble carrot, you are going to need to add in different layers of umami. And he said one of the key things was fermentation, didn't he?
Yes, and that was the theme running through our visit. They have embraced fermentation with huge enthusiasm. And the final visit we made was to a catering college, a university in Copenhagen, where they've actually introduced a degree course in plant-rich food. And a big part of it is actually upcycling ingredients, upcycling waste ingredients and turning them into edible food. And they had the most extraordinary vegetable extract, which I think they called XO, which was a ferment of discarded bits of vegetable, potato peelings and stuff like that. But it had such intensity of flavour. You could see how it would really elevate a stew or a sauce, and lip-smackingly good. And we're beginning to see these things commercially taken up as well. So this isn't just airy-fairy thinking. There are actually companies now manufacturing these products and people using them in their recipes.
And it was insane, wasn't it? Because he started that part by explaining that something like 40 to 50% of a catering college on average is waste. It's peelings, it's bones, it's the stuff that you would discard. Even if you were being very careful, you would discard it.
Yeah.
And then he showed us, we'd just eaten the most glorious meal, and he showed us how they take, so say you've got a lemon and you've squeezed out all of the juice from the lemon.
Yeah.
That you would then take those lemon husks, even if you've grated the edge off because you've used the peel for something.
Yeah. Then
you would put it into a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
To take the bitterness out of it, and then you'd boil it up with a load of sugar, and it turns itself into this sort of citrus marzipan that you can then use as a base for cake or all sorts of different things. And it just seemed like the most obvious thing in the world, and it's full of fibre and it's full of texture and it's full of vitamin C and all this really good stuff that you actually do need in your body. But you'd never think to eat the skin of a lemon, would you?
No.
Save a few shavings, maybe.
Yeah. The other product I thought was really clever was something like a papadon made from potato peelings.
Yes, that was delicious, wasn't it?
It was delicious, yes. And cookies made out of coffee grounds. So these are everyday items which routinely get thrown out of kitchens, possibly go, if they're not composted, they'll end up in landfill, but they have nutritional value, they're tasty, they can be reutilized, and the idea that this could be a fundamental part of the way we cook seems just incredibly sensible. And it's a word I keep coming back to. A lot of the things we saw in Copenhagen were just incredibly sensible.
You know why that is, Simon? They have far more women on their government. It's funny because it's true.
Yeah,
but they have had, it's not just women. There has been a very sensible system that one of the other cohort was explaining to me about their working systems. In the UK, we have, as you know, the 4-year cycle. You spend the first year going, gosh, it's my first 100 days. What are we going to do? This is what we're going to do. 2 years implementing it. And then a year basically starting your campaign trail for the next one. Yeah. Whereas in Denmark, they seem to have 10-year working parties, which were apolitical or certainly cross-party, where everybody was, you are then on a longer term scheme. So you may have 3 governments come and go during the time that you're on a working party. Yeah. But it means there's consistency, there's development, there's growth. There isn't this sort of coming into government and immediately slagging off the people who've just left.
No.
And pulling it all apart and then doing your own thing. And then the next people come in and do that. And it's just nonsense. You never get any progress, do you?
No. I mean, we're seeing this at the moment because both DEFRA ministers have changed, and they just got to the point where they understood their briefs and they were bringing useful stuff. There was reference to Henry Dimmleby's white paper, and we're really hopeful that was going to come in. And then because of the Angela Rayner thing and the reshuffle, ministers changed, and basically you have to start from scratch. So the long-term thinking that we saw in Denmark, to me, makes perfect sense, because a lot of these projects, they don't really have a political complexion. They just need to be organised. And a really good example of that, and one that also illustrates the way that government, NGOs and private companies work together, was their whole grain programme. So, at the moment, how everyone's getting completely neurotic about high protein. So,
Yes.
Gotta have protein. We already eat too much protein. We don't need more protein. What we need more of is fibre, because we are deficient in fibre in the UK. And the Danes were in the same place. So what they did was they decided they would have a mark that they would put on products to indicate that they were high in fibre, and they would encourage companies to put more fibre in their products, to use more whole grains, and it's been massively successful. So it's widely taken up by companies who have put the logo on their products. Consumers have looked for it. They have altered their diets to include more whole grain products. And as a result, fibre in the Danish diet has increased, with all the good things that brings, which is basically gut health, which of course now we're very interested in. But actually, helping your gut to work through increasing the amount of whole fibre you put through it is a really fundamental thing to do. And I love the way that they've done it through a coalition of NGO, government and private industry.
It's incredibly clever, isn't it? But it's also, for everyone who listens to this podcast, they know that I get very excited about UPF. The whole point of ultra-processed food is to remove the fibre from it. It's to make it addictive, to hack your body to think that you can just eat more, but it's to remove the fibre. Anything that creates a satiety, a kind of, anything that's really that good for you. And so it seems almost nuts that we're now having to add fibre back in when you think it naturally occurs in all fruit and all vegetables and whole grains, and anything that's actually properly food generally has got a varying degree of fibre already in it.
Yeah, the Danes have been very successful in getting more legumes into the diet. So through the catering companies that do the school meals and meals to government offices and all that, they have a program where they have replaced meat with legumes, and of course that has the advantage, although there's still protein in legumes, but there's also a lot of fibre as well. So that has made a big difference to the balance in people's diet. I mean, it's one meal a day, but it's still a significant step. And then if you can persuade people to go to the supermarket and come home with high fibre products to eat the rest of the time, you can make a real difference. And of course, just like we were saying with hospitals, if you can get people's fibre consumption up, people will be ill less often, their guts will work more effectively, and they won't need to be in hospital so much. So once again, it comes back to this incredibly sensible way of looking at things. But they do look at things in a much more holistic way, and the different bits of society do seem to communicate very well.
Yeah, I wondered that, because one of the things that was really interesting at Mayer's Madhouse is we were all questioning how possible it was to have this level of culinary excellence at all these different outlets around the city, weren't we? Because it was like, how are you having somebody cooking all this stuff from scratch in every kitchen, in every hospital kitchen even? I mean, everything in the UK, or not everything, but a lot of it is centralised, and it gets sent out and reheated at every outlet. But they're actually training people completely from scratch in genuinely useful culinary skills. I think it was nearly 18,000 chefs had been trained. There was 1,000 public kitchens. I mean, just sitting there thinking about the upskilling of that, and the way that you are creating that connection then with each outlet, with the food that's being created within the outlet, the smell of the food being cooked downstairs. It's just extraordinary.
they've also been very clever at the way they've involved children and schools in this program. So Copenhagen has run a big program about potatoes. So children are encouraged to grow their own potatoes, and there are videos online on YouTube of Danish potato farmers, and then they organise visits from the schools out to meet the potato farmers, and apparently the kids regard the potato farmers as rock stars because they've seen them on YouTube.
Love
which I think
that.
is fantastic.
Love it. It is incredible, that whole connection. And it doesn't matter whether you live in a flat and you're given a smaller pot that you can then just pop on your windowsill and still grow some potatoes, or you're allowed to keep the pots. They're just sort of sitting on the edges of the school playground and things like that. They're literally growing potatoes everywhere. So it's something that every child has grown some potatoes.
It is such a clever thing to do. One of the things I really like about Denmark is that wanting good food is not seen to be in any way elitist. So I'm a huge proponent of organic. I've been banging on about it for 40 years, but I do recognise that to a lot of people it seems quite a sort of alien concept. In Denmark, the retailer that sells the most organic food is Netto, which is a discounter. And you go into any supermarket in Copenhagen, and I've been in quite a few recently, just ordinary, like a little Tesco local or a little Sainsbury's, the first thing you see is a beautiful array of organic fruit and vegetables. When you come in, it's the first thing you see. So it's like a real statement. Organic food served here. And it is not something that is seen as pretentious or class riven or anything unusual. It's just, why would I want to eat food with pesticides? This stuff tastes good. I'll have it. And it's not a lot more money. So, yeah, of course I buy it. It's that sort of connection they have made between the way you behave as a citizen and the influence you can have on the wider environment. There's a connectivity there, which I to be honest, I came back from Copenhagen quite jealous because they have made so many good moves in so many areas that I have been hoping the UK would have made years ago, and we never quite seem to have got round to.
So what is the solution, Simon? I mean, it's great that we obviously love our trip to Copenhagen. We've seen all of this change. We've seen what is possible when people work together. What meaningful change could we possibly affect or influence in the UK, do you think?
Well, I think the answer has to be in part political, and we are trying to arrange a ministerial visit to go along similar lines to what we saw on our study trip, because I think DEFRA are quite interested in understanding how other countries are doing things. So I'm very much hopeful that one of our new ministers can be persuaded to spend a couple of days in Copenhagen meeting the sort of people we met, because I mean it's a really great way of thinking about food from a different angle. So I think a political initiative is always good, and that's something that we're hoping to make happen. I was struck that a lot of these initiatives are quite local based, or at least they were local based to begin with, and I sometimes think we spend too much time thinking about national food initiatives and we don't spend enough time thinking about local food initiatives. What can I do in my local community? Where I live, we've got something called Greening the Grid, which is people just taking care of their front gardens and not concreting over front gardens, and making sure that if they've got an apple tree in their back garden, they pick the apples and they're then collected centrally and handed out again. I think some of these local initiatives are much underestimated, because clearly what's in the supermarket has a massive influence in what we eat, but we should not be blind to the fact that local initiatives can make a difference as well.
I completely agree with you. I said this just this morning I can't bear to buy apples at this time of year. It's October. They're literally, there's so many apples everywhere at the moment. The idea of buying them from a supermarket is absolutely bonkers. Even if you haven't got a tree in your back garden, anyone who does, if you say, can I have some apples, they'll go, please, please take some apples.
No, we hand them out at our local tube station, and actually we've been making cider out of them as well, very successfully. Yeah, and it's actually Cornelius, who ran the study tour, and I both discovered that we've run companies that took freely available local fruit and turned it into cider. So that was a slightly unexpected link. But yeah, and it's a mast year this year as well. Do you know what a mast year is?
Tell me.
A mast year is when the combination of a wet winter and a hot summer produces an amazing abundance of fruit and vegetables. So you'll have noticed lots of apples this year, lots of pears. Great year for blackberries, great year for sloes. So yeah, absolutely we've been very lucky this year. The pear tree in my back garden just has not stopped producing pears.
Oh, I've got a raspberry canes that my brother gave me, and this year I've had a huge bowl of raspberries every single day, and if I miss a day and I haven't gone to pick them, they're almost falling over. They're so heavy with fruit.
Fantastic.
And it just keeps coming. It's amazing.
No, it has been a wonderful year. So yeah, sort of think local, act global, I think, is what I came away with.
I like that. I think the organic element has really stayed with me as well, about the importance of that. And I think there's a lot, Groundswell is a fantastic agricultural awareness event that happens every year. There's a lot going into kind of sustainable agriculture and regenerative farming and all of this kind of stuff. I think organic needs to be back on the thing, but there's almost too many different schemes and too many different things that I'm not quite sure which one is the one that we should be getting behind here.
I don't think we have to get behind any one scheme. I think any scheme that looks after soil health is to be encouraged. Regenerative agriculture is getting the publicity at the moment. I'm an organic guy, died in the roots. For me, it's the best system. But we have a lot in common with the regenerative agriculture people. And, if it means farmers investing in their soil fertility, then I'm in favour of it. There is the danger of greenwashing because there's no real rules around regenerative agriculture, so we have to watch for that. But I certainly think that yes, a renewed focus on who grows our food, what conditions it's grown under from an environmental point of view, what it does to the soil, and crucially what they get paid for it. Because it has to be economically sustainable as well. That those are the things that can really improve our agricultural system. And the other thing is this emphasis on moving people away from meat and more towards plant-based products. We're not asking everyone to go vegetarian, and certainly they eat a lot of meat in Denmark, but they have focused on the transitions you could make. And one of the slides we saw, which has really stayed with me, in fact I printed it off and I've got it on my office wall, shows the impact of making particular transitions. And the biggest impact by far is minimizing the amount of cows and lamb and pig that you have in your system, and swapping that for chicken or fish. That is the single thing you can do that would make the biggest environmental impact. And then after that, it's moving away from meat completely and moving towards a more vegetable based diet. And that is, the Lancet Eat report came out last week, and it's the second Lancet Eat report. They both said the same thing. We need to drastically cut our meat reduction. We need to think of a way of doing that in which our livestock farmers continue to have a living. But what I notice in Denmark is that whilst they do eat meat, it's a very good quality. So I think this message of, eat meat, but eat less of it and eat better quality meat, that's the way to go.
100%. The stat that stuck with me is we're not trying to stop everyone from eating meat and fish, and we're just asking you to eat much better quality organic meat and fish, and you should be looking at just 10% of your plate, not 30 or 40 or 50, as many people often think, and I think I was guilty for maybe believing this, but actually 90% of your plate should be from a plant, and that includes your potatoes and other things, and just 10% meat. And that, how that had made a difference, how they'd got the average portion down from 100 grams to about 20 or 30 grams. Just seems so obvious. You've still got it there, it's still delicious, but actually all these other items on the plate are also delicious.
And the good thing is there is agreement on this. If you look at the government's Eat Well plate, it says the same thing. So it's not like it's controversial. We know for the sake of our health and for the sake of our planet, we should be reducing the amount of dairy we eat, we should be reducing the amount of red meat we eat. And there is consensus around that. It's just a question of how you encourage people to do that. In Denmark, they've been very clever in bringing their citizens with them on that journey. So it hasn't been draconian, it hasn't been the dreaded nanny state. It's saying, we think this is a really good idea and we think you're going to enjoy it. And there's a lot of emphasis on things tasting great. I mean, we went out to that vegan restaurant for dinner, and the food they served was fantastic. In fact, we didn't eat. We had a wonderful organic hotel. You know, we ate brilliantly for the entire 3 days. So there was absolutely no loss in food quality by being more sustainable.
If anything, I came back from that feeling brilliant. I felt really well. I'd been eating whole grains and beautiful food, and, you know, the importance of just having a few leaves of spinach on your scrambled egg in the morning, and the difference, and the seeds scattered over the top, the difference that actually brings you, the fibre it's increased, the good protein that it's increased. Just absolutely extraordinary. I genuinely came back from a work trip feeling better than when I left, which is not always the case, let's be honest.
My favourite moment was getting to our organic hotel very late at night, but the bar was still open. And I said to the barman, which of your beers is organic? And he looked at me really puzzled and he said, well, all of them, of course.
Because it was a gold level, which means, was
That's
it 90 to 100% of everything that is sold is organic? From the wine to the beer, everything.
The only issue I had with our hotel was that you didn't actually realise how organic it was. It was done in such a low-key way that, I mean, I didn't realise, for example, we had this most amazing closed-circuit shower system. Which
the showers.
The same water got reused all the time, but cleaned in between usage, he said hurriedly. But they worked out a way to drastically reduce their water consumption, but no one told us about it, so we didn't realise that was going on. And apparently, when I asked the communications director from the hotel why they didn't explain more about all the wonderful things they were doing, apparently it's very un-Danish to do that. It feels like boasting, whereas to me it would just be like, we're doing all this fantastic stuff, but apparently it's not the Danish way to bang on about it.
No, but I love that. Getting to know the people in Denmark, I was loving they're so funny and so dry, but also this really lovely kind of humble culture that isn't, look at me and boastful, like you say. It's understated. There's something really gentle yet very funny about it, which is really enjoyable. Well, I want to move to Copenhagen, that's all I can say. I came back and said to my husband, that's it, we're moving. It's just pretty much one of the nicest places I've ever been.
It is a fantastic city. Everywhere's walkable because it's quite compact, but there's also a good tube system and buses. But the major problem with Copenhagen is the bicycles. They've been so successful at getting everybody on bicycles that every time I attempted to cross the road, suddenly a great flock of bicycles would appear from an unexpected direction. So I would have to get more bicycle aware before I could live safely in Copenhagen. But other than that, yes, it's a brilliant city. I can understand why it's such a popular destination, because it's just a very, very civilized place to be. And I think the 3 days we spent there were really very both educational and enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it was just an incredible thing. So for listeners at home, what can you do to learn from these learnings? I guess look at your local food systems, support your local farmers, especially if they're organic, get involved with them, talk to them, eat more whole grains and eat less meat.
Definitely. And be creative with your food. I mean, I think it's very easy to fall into a rut and cook the same things. I would recommend an organic fruit and veg box, which we get one a week. And because the stuff is seasonal, first of all, it means it's always in great condition and you get maximum nutrition out of it. But it also means you're constantly getting a different set of things each week, and it forces you out of your comfort zone. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of cabbage, but when a cabbage turns up in your box, you've got to work out to do something with it. I think it's a good way of making sure that your diet is varied. The other brilliant thing about getting a fruit and veg box is because it's there, you tend to cook that first. So that becomes the centerpiece of what you do. And then if that runs out, maybe you go shopping and do some top-ups until the next box arrives. So as a way of becoming more plant-based and putting fruit and veg center in your diet, then a delivery box makes sense to me. And, the organic ones now are really great quality.
Brilliant. I couldn't agree more. Simon, unbelievably, I want to talk to you about this all day, but we've run out of time. But thank you so much for coming on and explaining everything about the Copenhagen food system.
Well, thanks for having me. It was, as you can tell, I really enjoyed being there. It was lovely having all our UK guests and showing them some of the good bits about the Danish food system. And I very much hope that will now start diffusing throughout the system. And there's more to come. We've got a programme of work and we'll be doing some more work next year.
Yeah, there's certainly more to come. Thank you so much, Simon.
Okay, thanks a lot, AJ. Bye for now.
Thanks so much for listening to Food Rebels. So you don't miss out on more brilliant brand recommendations, insider tips and inspiring interviews, please make sure you're subscribed to Food Rebels and drop a comment below. These simple actions, like subscribing or commenting, take just a few seconds, but they mean the world to us. And it doesn't just help Food Rebels, it really helps to support the food brands and personalities we have on the show, who are all trying to raise awareness. And if you know any brilliant brands, or food founders, or chefs or campaigners who have a really great story to tell, then do let us know. You can get in touch with us either via our website or you can reach out on social media. Our handle is @food_rebels_, and we love hearing from you. Thanks so much for listening.